Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, August 27th, game week, Jamie. The first Hit and Hustle for the regular season 2024. We're so excited. It is finally here. No more off-season shows. No more speculation. We have the depth chart. We are going to see a game on Saturday. We're going to break down film. We're going to get back into the regular swing of things. I'm so excited. It's a very exciting time of year. Jamie's fired up. I'm fired up. We hope you're fired up, and we want to thank you for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button on this video. Please subscribe to our channel. It's very important you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and all those things, and hit the notification bell soon whenever it is. We are going to be going live this year, and we are going to be going live a lot. We'll get to that in a little bit. There's going to be a lot of live shows on our channel here, so we're very excited about that. Links to the podcast are in the description below, as always, if you prefer the audio format. And as always, Notre Dame is back, and ESQ's bamboo dress shirts are back as well. They have finally restocked their bamboo dress shirts online. You've seen them on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches, and they're made from proprietary fabric that makes it cooler and softer than cotton. It's the best shirt for any occasion. Go to esqclothing.com and use ISD15 to get 15% off your order. That's ISD15 to get 15% off. People are going crazy in the chat right now. Jonah's here with a bunch of shamrocks. Thank you for being here, Jonah. Jacob Paulus is here. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Finally, game week. Let's go. Jamie, how are you feeling? Brian Shaw says, thanks for the tweets every time you go live. Absolutely. You know, you got to reach people in multiple ways, Jamie, and that's what we're doing. How you feeling, my man? Game week. Are you fired up?
I'm fired up. I'm totally fired up. I mean, I can't wait for this game. It is interesting. Like, I do find this like very interesting, the kind of reactions to this game from people who don't cover Notre Dame or Texas A&M, and some of their kind of reactions to it. And then also to like some of the Notre Dame fans who were like thinking that if like Charles Jagusah played, they'd be like, well, he just lock up Nick Scorton one-on-one. Like you don't
need to know who Nick Scorton is if Charles Jagusah's out there. He's gonna put the clamps on.
Like it's not. I don't know. I've just found it very interesting, and I find the comments here too. I think. I mean, we'll get into it, but I think a lot of people are just like Anthony Knapp versus Nick Scorton. Like, you know, what you gonna do, brother? What Nick Scorton's coming down on you? And I'm like, I think he might have to only block him one-on-one 3 or 4 times in the game. Yeah. You know, like in a pass pro situation. Like I think maybe everybody doesn't know the nuance. They kind of just think you just kind of man up all the time, and it's like it's kind of like how Ben Morrison wasn't on. Ben Morrison didn't shadow Marvin Harrison and go one-on-one with him the whole game. Like that's not how it goes a lot of the time. That's not how football works, guys. That's not how it works.
Everyone said like that Ohio State game in 2022, like Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka are going to light the defense on fire. It's not what happened, right? They made their plays. That's not what happened in the game. And I think Jacob Paulus brings up a good point, something I kind of want to start with. FSU's vaunted D-line got destroyed last Saturday. And here's the thing. We speculate about the game. We go over matchups, how things might go, how things how they go out on how they play out on paper, things of that nature. Once the game starts, what happens, right? And so I think what could be on paper is just it just kind of goes out the window, right? Like no one would have said like, oh, Georgia Tech, they're going to dominate Florida State on both lines. No one would have said it. And that's exactly what happened, right? And no one would have picked, everyone except for Seamus on the College Game Day, like they all picked Florida State. Georgia Tech went out there and did the thing, right? And that's the thing about college football is, anything can kind of happen, especially when you don't have just a complete mismatch, right? We can say Notre Dame has an advantage over A&M's offensive line on defense. Texas A&M's defense has an advantage over Notre Dame's, and on and on and on. Until the game starts, you just don't know. And the teams aren't so mismatched that it's just going to be a complete blowout for anyone on any side, right? And Florida State, Georgia Tech kind of shows that, in my opinion. Like, you got to let the games happen. And if it's a close game or for whatever reason, Notre Dame has to come back or they get out big and Texas A&M comes back. Like, you just got to take these things. This is a major college football game. It is going to be close, in my opinion. It is going to be hard fought. It is going to be very competitive, and that's what it's going to be. So we just got to get ready for that, Jamie. That's kind of my take watching Florida State play Georgia Tech. The other part, pat on the back to us, Jamie, because we said, I don't know about DJU and that Florida State offense, and that's what played out, man. It just didn't. It just isn't it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been saying that basically. It just didn't seem like a good fit. Just in terms of his skill set and Mike Norvell's offense. It's not to say that it won't get better or they won't like learn stuff. But I do think that you saw kind of a lot of what he can do, what he does, and how he's different from Jordan Travis. Because I think if like there's a lot of plays too where I think like no one's open, Jordan Travis is creating something outside of the play that was huge for their offense really the last kind of few years, and they didn't have that. I mean, to be fair to DJ, like they don't have the same receivers, and those guys weren't. With Keon Coleman and Wilson, you could just throw it up to those guys, and they were like dominant 50-50 ball guys, and it's not the same with the guys that they have now. And you could even see like a guy like who I don't even know if he played in the game, but Hakeem Williams was like a top 50 wide receiver recruit who was going to be a sophomore this year, that they were like, man, this guy's he's a guy they were counting on to be a thing. Well, he didn't become a starter, and he's like nothing to their team right now. I mean, it's kind of similar to like a Tobias Merriweather last year. Where like, man, Notre Dame really needed Tobias Merriweather to be at a certain level, and it's like, well, he just wasn't at that level. Yeah, and it's not to say he won't, but it's just like he wasn't for them. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into it too. It's like they traveled over there. Maybe they didn't handle like when they were supposed to go over there the right way. When I watch a game, to me, I thought that I'm like, man, Georgia Tech definitely was like physical in their camp, and they were ready physically. Like they were better than them up front, but it's just like, I don't think they're more talented than Florida State up front. Florida State was bring back almost everybody on their offensive line.
Yeah.
And they still got whooped by Georgia Tech's supposedly inferior defensive line. And I'm like, I don't know if they didn't prepare enough. And I think that might have had a lot to do with it. So that is going to play a factor into this game too. And we're going to see, maybe, one team didn't do this well enough to prepare in this way. Maybe this one team didn't adjust enough. However, I think both these coaching staffs are pretty good in terms of like, making adjustments. And so I think, but that's going to be really like a big thing early on, because I think Colin Klein's probably going to come out, do a whole bunch of exotic stuff early, and you don't want to overreact to it, but you got to react to it and then be ready as you go along going forward. That's what Al Golden and the staff have to do.
Yeah. Other part from that game is Haynes King was giving me big time Riley Leonard vibes. I mean, that at least from a running standpoint, like that is what Riley Leonard can do. Probably more so. I think Riley Leonard's a better athlete than Haynes King is. Haynes King is obviously a very good athlete. I think Riley Leonard's got a little bit more juice in the open field, right? And so you get a guy like him, and that is what can give defenses ton of problems, right? Obviously, he had a lot more rushing yards without the bad snap at the end, which kind of brought down his rushing yardage. But it's just like that's what a mobile quarterback can do. A big physical quarterback can do to a defense where they play it right. He pulls it. You mentioned it a couple of times. You mentioned it on Power Hour. You mentioned it during the game, I believe, on tweets. It's just he's turning losses into gains, and that is the sort of thing that can keep you on schedule and keep the offense rolling. And that's what he was able to do. So that's good stuff. Everyone's bringing up the depth chart and the offensive tackle position and a left guard position. So left tackle Anthony Knapp, left guard Sam Pendleton. I'm disappointed Sam Pendleton shaved his mustache because I thought that was pretty sweet, but
Yeah.
it's something that Notre Dame does. Like Ian Book had it during camp and then he shaved it, but he looked good. I just want to go over what Marcus Freeman said about the two positions yesterday during his press conference. He said on how Anthony Knapp won the left tackle job. I think you make decisions in the moment based off previous experiences, and then that's the beautiful part of practice. Like there's competition. And I tell those guys every day, you should be trying to take somebody's job. And every day, if you're a starter, you should know guys behind you are trying to take your job. We've had 10 practices since then that basically kind of got us to the conclusion that Anthony Knapp will be our starting left tackle. But he's worked tirelessly. He's done a good job of building trust with his coaching staff and why he made that decision. So I think it is important to like a little bit of, I don't want to say news, but just context here. 10 practices that Anthony Knapp got to win the job, right? And that is a good amount of practice, right? If you have shown 10 times every time your team goes out there that you're the best option, then you're the best option, right? And it to me it doesn't sound like it was particularly close, given the fact that as soon Jagusaw went down, they had Tosh Baker in there, I think for one day. Maybe they had a scrimmage in there. Maybe they had some team stuff in there.
Maybe like a couple days or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Anthony Knapp took over, and then he didn't relinquish it for the rest of the time. So that's context. So there was a question early. Let me try to find it. It was like that much better. Zach Donahue. Is Knapp just that much better than Baker? I trust the staff's judgment. Just wondering what went wrong with Baker's development or lack thereof. True freshman in that environment versus A&M's D line. I think we noted it a couple of times. Baker's never won a job, right? So whatever is there, I think we've seen it in games, right? And I think the staff saw it in practice. Like he just doesn't have the mobility, he doesn't have the athletic ability to play the position. He can move people, but not enough to mitigate the weaknesses. And Anthony Knapp went in there and took the job, Jamie. And look, it's not a trust the staff situation. Their evaluation is the only one that we can go off of because we haven't seen any of camp. We haven't seen any like team reps with Anthony Knapp in there. We saw him in the spring game, obviously, but that's kind of what we have to go off, Jamie. And I don't want to say trust the staff, right? Because it's like trust but verify type thing. But if that's their evaluation, that's their evaluation.
Yeah, and I also think that if it was particularly close, that they would have used the or, and they would have said, yeah, it's there. And I don't think that I don't know with what went wrong with Tosh Baker's development. I think there's a lot of things you could probably point to with him in terms of he came along at a time when it was COVID, his very first year. So they didn't really have a full camp. Like he didn't have a real fall camp to deal with. And there was a lot of like restrictions on practice and all that kind of stuff. So his redshirt year was kind of like a wash. Like it was, and for all those guys, really, like it was a tough year. And then the next year, he was there, and it also happened that obviously Fisher and Alt came in, and they were just better than him. They were better than him, and so I think maybe if he had come along at a time where there was a little bit more leeway to kind of like, hey, get these reps and learn behind somebody else while you're kind of doing it and develop. And that could have helped him a little bit. But I mean, also there's been plenty of guys who had their path blocks and they find other ways to actually find the field and play. And he was someone who had a lot better mobility when he was lighter. So and some guys lose that when they gain too much. And that I think was part of that with him. But also too, like I've always said, like if he just walked into a room, you'd be like, this guy plays in the NFL. You would just say that because size, there's a difference between guys who play in the NFL and guys who don't. If you've ever like kind of walked around an NFL team, like there's the linemen specifically, like they just look different. It's like, man, their hands are different. They're longer. They're just huge. That is how Tosh Baker looks. He looks like a guy, so if he doesn't play in the NFL, something went wrong. That's what I always say. Well, obviously something didn't go right for him because it never kind of materialized. And he was probably someone who needed to learn how to play better with his length and be a little bit better with his leverage and all that. And it just kind of never happened for him. And that's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. So even if he would have played, yes, he's older. But I mean, if he had won the job, out of this, I definitely wouldn't have felt super confident of him going like, well, he's handling it. Like, we haven't seen enough. And I've also just in the years in practice that I've watched him and, he's always been with, the 2s or 3s, right? He gets beat by the 2s and 3s in pass rush and whatever. He's not dominating that thing. And it's just, that's how you move up and that's how you show yourself. If you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to play with the 1s. Yeah. And that's just kind of always how it was with him.
Yeah. I'm going to give a special shout out to our guy Beefeater ND08. I hit 9 college football podcasts yesterday. He put earlier in the chat. He's on a Mountain West YouTube chat comment section at midnight. He's mainlining college football podcasts. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being making us a part of your college football, Rolodex there, big guy. Look for your sake, let's whittle it down a bit, right? Let's streamline this a little bit. It's a long year, my guy. You're going to run out of gas. But make sure you make Irish Sports Daily your home for your make sure we make the top list there. All right. Cause I think we'll do you right. Appreciate you. Hit the like button, hit subscribe if you're listening right now. Sam Pendleton. Okay. And this is the one I think people are starting to kind of come to the conclusion like, hey, he won this job, right? Like he went out there and played well, right? Beat out Rocco Spindler, beat out Pat Coogan, right? Even why can't I think of his name? Sullivan Absher at right guard now. He had a chance at the left guard position. Sam Pendleton went in there and won the job, which is very difficult to do considering the fact that he started as a backup center, right? He obviously showed them enough, at the center position to be able to move people, at least in pass protection. He had trouble with snaps, and maybe that played a part in this too. You move him over there, you gave him some reps, and he went out there and showed out. Bring up Marcus Freeman's comments on Sam Pendleton. Same thing with Knapp. It's just consistency and doing the job you're expected to do over and over and over. And that's why you make decisions. It's not one day thing. It's not a last year thing. It's okay. Who do we believe is consistently shown in practice to get the job done over and over and over? That's why we made those decisions. We have a lot of confidence in the two deep of our offensive line. There's guys with experience that are in the 2 deep. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision on who you want that first group to be. And Anthony and Sam are 2 guys we felt give us the best chance to have success. That's it. He went out there and he played the best, right? And you know what's interesting about this whole thing, Jamie? How many times in the last however long, as far back as you can remember, fans are always upset about Notre Dame playing it safe, playing the seniors, playing the guys who, they have loyalty to, right? And they want to play the young guys. And now Notre Dame is doing exactly that thing. They are playing 2 players who have not been in the program, who have no experience, and they're going out there and they played better in practice, and so they are inserted into the lineup. This is what fans have always wanted, and now they're getting it. And look, and it makes people nervous, right? And that's fine if you're nervous about it, right? Like, it is two inexperienced players. There is that other end of the coin, but Notre Dame is doing the thing that fans have kind of called for years, and so we'll see if it pays off, right? It doesn't make it right, but this is what you want. They gave those guys a chance. They played better, and now they're inserted into the lineup, and they were given the starting roles. So I think that's good for, just the credibility of the staff to say, hey, if you go out there and compete, you're going to win the job. So I do feel a little bit differently about Sam Pendleton than I do Anthony Knapp, because he was set to be he is playing due to injury. If Charles Jagusaw had not gotten hurt, he would not be the starter. Sam Pendleton went out there and won the job. So you got to feel pretty good about that. Where are you at with that, Jamie?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Charles Jagusaw is he was as unproven as Anthony Knapp.
100%.
So, I'm not saying that Anthony Knapp would have beat him out or anything like that, but it was pretty clear they wanted Charles Jagusaw to win that job. That was just how they kind of had positioned it. And I'm sure he had done enough over that time to kind of be in that position. I think the way it's something I wrote about in Six Thoughts last week too, is that the way people should look at the Pendleton winning this job is no different than looking at what happened with Ben Morrison and Clarence Lewis in 2022, because Clarence Lewis led the team in snaps. He never left the field in 2021. He was, and by all accounts, they like him as a player. They were this guy, he's just a reliable guy, a smart guy, always knows his role. But yeah, there was limitations to him, but they never took him off the field. He was their boundary corner. And then within a couple games, they started Morrison, and it had to be very hard to be Clarence, we're benching you and we're going to start Ben.
Yeah.
That had to have been extremely hard to do, but he was obviously that was the right move. I think no one would debate that was the wrong move. That was obviously the right move. And even looking at it from another perspective is just being they could have just been well, Clarence Lewis, okay, because he moved into the nickel. Instead of being well, Clarence Lewis will be the nickel, they're no, we're going to bring in Thomas Harper to compete with him.
Yeah.
And then Thomas Harper won the job. And then it was it could have been the same kind of thing going into this. Well, Lewis has done that, so he can be our nickel, whatever. And they were no, we're bringing in Jordan Clark. And that's how they look at it. And then obviously Lewis is gone. That sucks. But it's one of those things where it's these guys are better. And they recognize it, and they're we have to bring in guys that are going to compete for it, or just bring in Rod Hurd and being well, he's the transfer, it's a 6-year guy, whatever, and being Schuler's won the job, so he is going to be the starter in the beginning of the thing. It's not to say he's going to keep it. Obviously, that competition is going to keep going, and Hurd is going to play a lot, but people know who the best guy is. They know, the team knows. The team knows who's this guy's better. That's whatever. And obviously the staff knows, right? So that's all important. If you look at last year too, where you saw how Ashton Craig was inserted into the Clemson game, and the staff had to have looked at it after that game and going forward, because he only got in because Zeke Correll got hurt and Andrew Kristofic got hurt. But they had to look at it man, maybe we didn't give Craig a long enough look earlier, because he just stole that job, for the rest of the way. And now he's kind of a foundational piece for this year's line and going forward.
Zeke Correll is a captain at NC State right now.
Yeah. And I think whatever, I've always been pretty honest about Zeke Correll and his limitations of what he can and
right,
can't
but
do.
I'm just saying that's the caliber of person that he took the job.
He could start at a bunch of teams. He's but Craig's better.
Yeah.
So and it's just like, or last year, Faison, like they messed up. He should have been playing sooner. Like, I'm not saying him being inserted more would have won this game or that game, but could have helped. Could have helped. He was better than some of these other guys, and they had like no depth. And whether that was like because he was a former walk-on or they didn't Elvin or like whatever, they made a mistake. Guy should have been playing more sooner. And I think you don't want to be in those positions where it's like you're sticking to the status quo and keeping it chalk because that's the way it's supposed to be. It's like, nah, like it's you got to play the best guys. It's got to be the best guys. It should be a competition. That's why you recruit all this depth, and then you kind of go forward from there. And then things are going to work itself out. Like all of a sudden, like Khalid Kareem in 2017 was like
Yeah.
kind of on the fringe of the rotation. Then all of a sudden, you're like, man, this guy's balling. We got to put him. And then he's playing a ton by the end of the year. And then by 2018, he's a stud and all that. Like it's just you have to adjust to however it works out. Who's playing the best, who's doing, and then things will get evaluated as they go along too. But I don't, and it's not to say I know that Knapp and Pendleton are going to do well in this game, but I think we can feel pretty confident. Like you don't make those moves unless you're convinced those guys are better right now.
Yeah. Dayon Yarmeadow is in the chat saying, I remember a few weeks ago, I told you guys Schuler would be the starting safety. I don't remember this. Do you remember this, Jamie?
I'm totally sorry, Dayon. I don't
you know
remember
what,
your
though?
name in the thing,
If that is
if
what
you told
happened,
us, then
kudos to you. Flowers to Dayon. Great job by you on that. That's a good call. Look at, and it's another situation. There's no or on that. Like it's his job. He is the starting safety, and Rod Hurd is playing behind Xavier Watts. So if I had to guess, I would say Hurd is probably the third safety in.
Yeah.
But we don't know that, right? And so,
but
look,
if he wasn't
right. So great job by Don Schuler there. That's a good job by him. And so he's going to get his first big time work in the game. Someone asked a question. I should have started. They were talking about continuity on the team, and it was in relation to basically asking about Texas A&M, new staff, a bunch of new players, right? They brought in 20 plus transfers, right? New scheme, both on offense and defense. And they're talking about the continuity. And I think there's a part of this that really gets lost, right? There's a continuity issue that Notre Dame could run into on offense, but not on defense, right? You've had the same coaches. You only have like one transfer, actually two transfers. You have Oben and you have Rod Hurd, who are going to play big minutes. Obviously Jordan Clark as well. But there are so many pieces to Notre Dame's team. Obviously, there's a ton of guys on the D-line. The starting secondary has been around. Sal Golden's third year. They have continuity of staff. Like, there's a thing about playing in openers, Jamie, where you just kind of don't know, right? You think you know, you prep as much as you can in the preseason and in practice and in camp, but you don't know. And I think that there's any unit that knows what they're going to get from their team and the players know what they're going to get from their coaches, it's Notre Dame's defense. I think that's a pretty big deal in this specific situation with so much turnover that's gone on at Texas A&M. I think it's a pretty big advantage for Notre Dame in this game, actually, that people kind of aren't talking about. It's like Notre Dame's offensive line against A&M's D-line, true. Like that is a mismatch. But there's continuity issues there. That are just the nature of all the changes, new coaching staff, new defensive coordinators, new everything. And Notre Dame's defense doesn't have any of that against A&M's offense. I think that's a pretty big deal in this game. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think that is a bigger deal than people are making of it.
Wanted to put up Keith Herring asked the question. Want to give him credit for that. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that when you're coming in as a new side, okay, first, but let me premise this. If you look at what Elko did in the offseason in terms of getting rid, I don't think he booted a bunch everybody. Like, I think they would have kept like Walter Nolan, for example, right?
Yeah.
But definitely there were guys that they were like, this guy's a bad apple. Like, get out of here. Like, that happened because that was one of the things with Jimbo's staff that was a problem, is they just were star chasing and they weren't looking how guys would fit
Right.
in the culture of the program. And they had a different strength coach too that was an old school guy. Jerry Schmidt was kind of more into that was part of the thing that he would do, right? Is kind of like, I mean, that's the guy who tells you like, this guy doesn't want to work and this is whatever. And then one of the reasons he left after Elko is because he was like, the kids, you're not good. Like, and he went back to Oklahoma with Venables. And I think they brought in Tommy Moffitt, who was the longtime LSU, strength guy. They brought in a bunch of guys that they think are probably like their guys who can fit. So I think the culture is going to be, I mean, the culture was great right away at Duke, right? So I'm not saying that it'll be a cultural thing, but I do think having all these new faces in, like, guys just haven't played with each other as much. You haven't practiced with each other as much. You haven't played with each other as much. So when you hear like Al Golden talk about like, okay, we're solving problems here, in the secondary, and sometimes the guys, because they have the experience, they can say, no, we're going to do this. We're checked into something that we're checking out of this and getting into it. Then they're going to come to the sidelines after and figure out more of a permanent solution, but they can make a quick fix on the go, where that might be tougher to do if it's like 3 new starters in the secondary that haven't played with each other as much. And it's obviously these guys that they brought in have experience playing, but it's different when you're playing with new faces and all that. So that could be something. I think, like, they got a couple. One of the linebacker spots is going to be a new starter. The D line is kind of like moved around a little bit. So I think that defense is going to be probably great by the end of the year. But I would guess they'll be good to start, but not as good as they will be. So it's like kind of good to get them early. And then you can look at it, the offensive line too. Like, they have a bunch of guys returning, but it's like a mishmash of guys, and I don't know how good they're going to be as a unit. And some of these guys are kind of moving around, and it's like, did this guy win some of these guys have experience, but they experience because it was like you won the job by default because there wasn't anybody else there, right? So, and the 2 guys they brought in who are going to start, most likely is, the center from Utah and the guard from Kansas. Like, it's not to say those guys will be bad players, but it's like, it's not like they're bringing in certified studs there to do it. So it's not quite. I don't know how seamless it's going to be for their offensive line. I don't know how seamless it's going to be as a program when you think about 50 new kids. Because it was close to 30 transfers. Take about 20 recruits.
Yeah,
that's a lot of new. Out of the 85, that's a lot of new guys there that you're dealing with. And it's not to say they got a ton of talent. They're loaded with athletes. That's just really hard to kind of get it going immediately, right? Like, so Louisville, hey, it worked for them last year. They won 10 games. Go watch that first game against Georgia Tech. They didn't play that well. Like, they probably should have lost that game.
Yeah, it can hit, but it can also miss, and it's just a factor, right? Like, there's no getting around it. The coaches don't know how those players are going to react to the situation, right? You just don't. They're not used to them, right? And especially how they're going to react to the scheme and how they're going to perform, when they're put under pressure. That's not something that we have a concern with VSR Media, though. Like, we know how they're going to perform. They're going to perform, and they're going to get their content out. It's going to be quality. It's going to be great, right? And that's the comfort of knowing that you've got an Emmy Award-winning anchor running that company in Vahid Sadwazadeh. He's also a Notre Dame football pregame host. and they provide professional and cinematic video and photo. So if you're looking for a collegiate or pro level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long form video storytelling, social media management, website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. You don't have to take chances when you're dealing with VSR Media, Jamie. You don't have to do that. You know you're going to get good stuff. All right, there's a question about the Heat. Steven Scott. He was on the Texas A&M Ags YouTube show. He brought up how hot it's been. He says here, I think he means in South Bend, specifically the last couple of days. They told me they don't know anything about Texas heat. Said that it takes months to get acclimated, and they think it's a huge advantage. I do think that's true. I think, Notre Dame, it being hot for a couple of days in South Bend, like you'll feel it, but your body. And the other part too is like the fact that it's hot. Marcus Freeman doesn't want to like destroy his team game week before they go out to Texas.
No,
like
no one wants to.
Yeah, like they're not gonna.
It's
he's
stupid.
Not gonna.
Yeah,
like they might be out in the heat, but he's not gonna work them, right? Like he's just not gonna do that. They need to be fresh. This is kind of like, to me, this is kind of like the thing we just talked about with Texas A&M being youthful or whatever. Notre Dame they're not used to this. Like, it is an advantage, in my opinion, for A&M. It doesn't have to be decisive, but it is something that's in their favor. It just, they live in this, and Notre Dame does not. It's just like when teams come up for the cold, right?
Oh yeah, same thing.
Yeah, A&M comes up, Florida State comes up. It's going to be cold in November, right? Even if it's in the 30s and 40s. For Notre Dame's players, that's not that bad, right? We've been in this before. For those guys, it's like, this is freezing. I can't handle this, right? So it is an advantage, right? Is it enough to be decisive? I wouldn't think so, but we have to admit it's an advantage for Texas A&M for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And Texas heat is different for anyone who's been to Texas. It is like, it's gross. It's gross there. But I don't know, like it's one of those things where it's only if you didn't prepare for it or you don't have the depth to kind of deal with it. So it could be a problem, but it shouldn't be like a deciding factor in the game. Like, I don't think it'll be in that respect. I don't think it's going to be like that kind of stuff. Even with the cold too, it's like one of those, it's like, man, it's snowing. Like, you can't throw today. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, Tom Brady, I just watched the clip of him throwing 6 touchdowns in the snow the other day. And you could say, oh, he was used to it. And it's like, well, no, because it snowed, but it wasn't like a super windy day and all this. So there's other things that are like, can add to it, but you just can't, like, in this game, you can't play the D line. They can't play like 50 plays. I don't think you can do that with these guys. You have to be able to rotate guys, and you have to be able to have different times in the game where you're going to have different things. But it's the same thing for them. It's like, they can't play just because they're used to the heat doesn't mean like their guys are going to play like 25% more plays than the Notre Dame guys can. It's just like, it's hot as hot, and it's also at night. So it is going to be gross, but not as gross as it would be if they were playing at like, if it was a 3:30 game. Well, I think that would be like a much bigger factor.
Yeah, it will be a little bit cooler. And look, like I said, it's a factor. If Notre Dame were to go on and lose this game, I would list it as a factor, but I would not be like, this is no excuse. Like, you just have to get it done. Like, the job is the job, and you got to get it done for Notre Dame. Rick, okay. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to give major props to Rick on this. This is awesome. Aggie here. Enjoy the podcast. Hope both teams bring their best. Keep an eye on Stewart, Turner, Basantis, Scorton, and Bussey. Looking forward to watching Smash Mouth game between two great teams. Gig 'em Aggies. Thank you for the super chat. That's great, man. I really appreciate that, Rick, and thank you for
All
being
class
here.
right there.
Thank you for being a classy guy. We've talked a bunch about those guys. Specifically all the defensive ends. Bussy is it's a little S factor. Talking to Carter about that, I feel like when I spoke with Carter, there's a little meat on that bone. I feel like Bussy's they're gonna try to get him involved. You know how USC was kind of using what's his name, Odore Jackson as a freshman. They kind of put him in there and they did some stuff. I think A&M's got some stuff with Bussy there. They're gonna try to get him in because they have.
Yeah, he's a Zachariah Branch type of guy for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, but I say Adoree Jackson because he's mainly a defensive guy. But I think they want to get him the ball. I think he's listed as their punt returner? I think he's their number one punt returner. I saw that on the depth chart. So he's an X factor for them. They're going to want to hit explosives. I think explosives might be hard for A&M in this game just because they lost Ruben Owens, who's it's certainly their most explosive back. And so they're going to want to find some easy yards, easy touchdowns if possible. So look, definitely the Stewarts, the two Shamars. I mean, the two Shamar, Stewart and Turner. Scorton is obviously a problem. Chase Basantis, we're monitoring that situation. There's little rumblings going on. There might be a little injury issue there, but we don't know, unconfirmed. But we're monitoring that. We're scouring the internets to get some info on that. Gigamaggie says rain chance is 70%, which should be great for both teams. If it's going to be hot like that, send me the rain. Is that how it goes? As long as it's not windy, right? And look, when it's hot and humid and you get rain, there's also that brings lightning into the equation. No one wants a delay or anything like that. So, hopefully, if it were to rain, it's not all it's not all gross and windy and thunderstorms and lightning and things of that nature. All right, Jamie. Where do you want to go here as far as where you're at? We're going to do a full kind of breakdown scouting report on Texas A&M on Thursday. That's usually what we do. We're gonna give our predictions and things of that nature. Yeah, Greg Wasserman says the forecasts they change all the time, especially down in the South when there's a lot of stuff going on. So that's something to monitor there, Jamie. What are you kind of looking at in this game, just as like beyond kind of the surface level stuff? What is something that you're monitoring throughout this game, or what you're going to be tracking to kind of see as like a kind of a key to the game for Notre Dame and or Texas A&M?
I mean, I guess we'll dive into all the kind of like the main stuff that we've kind of been hitting on all the time anyways. Like obviously, like protecting the passer is going to be
right for
really
sure.
big for both teams. But I would say that stuff that probably hasn't been talked about enough. I'd say from an A&M perspective, I would say how they're going to handle. Yes, I mean they're blocking that defensive line in practice every day, and I think that's obviously you're gonna be ready to play when you're blocking those guys every day. But I think the amount of pressure that Notre Dame will likely bring, and some of the way they kind of mix it up and do a lot of different things, like kind of they're very like they bring a lot of early down pressure. They do a lot of different things there that could confuse protections. And yeah, with new guys and new spots or whatever, I think that is something to look at of like, some maybe like some busts up front for them that could get them kind of behind the chains. That is something I don't think people probably are talking enough about. That is something to watch. And I would say from a Notre Dame side, like I'm excited about the linebackers. I think they're going to be very good for Notre Dame this year. I will say that playing that many guys in a game is good, especially in this kind of heat. Like we said, that's a good thing. But when you're kind of bringing in guys and you're bringing in a guy fresh, and maybe it's been like a long time since the defense has been on the field, and this guy hasn't really played that much in the game, and all of a sudden he's going in there, and then A&M comes out and it's like Colin Klein is like pin and pulling here and then doing some kind of influence block, whatever. That's where I think stuff can happen, especially to young linebackers when it's like, man, these are your first snaps of the game. You're geeked up trying to fly to the football, trying to make a play, and maybe you aren't on your keys as well as you should be during that time. I think that's something that I would monitor in that game. I mean, if Notre Dame, I would be shocked if Notre Dame's linebackers were like, man, they were just totally on point the whole game. They didn't make those kind of mistakes. I wouldn't be shocked by it, but I also wouldn't be shocked the other way if like you're like, man, they gave up something. They gave up an explosive here because, one of these young linebackers got caught because they were, just inserted into the game and kind of geeked up here.
The wrong combination at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Could be like, I don't want to say deciding factor, but it could lead to an explosive, like you said.
Could be big.
Yeah. Like it's just like, and I think the same is kind of true with the wide receivers in a different way. Like what is the combination that works the best? That's kind of what I'm tracking there. Like they have 6 listed and, they put out the depth chart and, I noted that Faison and Collins were listed first. Other people pointed out like it was alphabetical across the board. Notre Dame has not always done that, right? The Oars, it used to be, but like, Great House is ahead of Harrison, right? Like you would have expected that anyway. Jeremiah Love is ahead of Price. Like you would have expected that anyway, right? So it is, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make anything of it. Maybe it is at least notable. Like we'll see if Faison and Collins come out first. We'll see on that. But just getting the right combination of wide receivers on the field, like who is the most efficient? What group leads to the most explosiveness, leads to the most success, right? I think Notre Dame every school likes to play 6. Can you play 6 and be an efficient passing game, be an efficient offense, throughout the year? That's going to be something for me. Just in terms of like, I have a hard time thinking that Notre Dame is going to be able to do that. I think there's going to be separation at some point. I just want to see if they can get there. Let's see. Ryan asks, do you expect both teams to snap under 15 seconds? FSU was clearly snapping around 12 right after comms shut off frequently. Do you think, I don't think A&M is going to play fast. That's just my opinion. I don't think that's what they're going to want to do. Do you think Notre Dame is going to try to speed this game up?
No, I don't really. Like, I do think there are going to be some times where they play with like a quicker tempo, but I don't think if, I mean, that's a great observation, Ryan. I don't know if they said that during the telecast, if that was happening, or you just noticed that during the game.
Ryan's on it.
But should have put up that the Charlie Day pointing in all directions. Instead of that one. Instead, I don't know how Notre Dame is going to approach it, and if that's how Florida State approached it, I kind of think maybe they were overthinking it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't want to like them to be able to like adjust to our adjustments and then whatever. Like, we just want to get the thing there, unless that's something that like Norvell typically does all the time or whatever. But I just think you got to run your offense no matter what and not get caught up in it. If there's something within the game that you see like, hey, we're always thinking of doing it this way, and or you notice that Florida State's doing that and you're playing them, then you adjust to it as you go with it. But I don't know. I just think a lot of that stuff is like way overthinking of just like, hey, we're worried about this, we're worried about that. It's just like, why were they worried about that at that point? Like, I would really love to know, what Norvell was kind of thinking there in terms of like, maybe he thought, well, Santucci, he's just going to always counter what we're doing this, or if that was the case. But I mean, if I'm looking at it and I'm going into that game and I'm like, man, we don't have a good rhythm in this whole game, Wouldn't you change it up? Wouldn't you want to
Right.
change it
Yeah.
up? Like, so I don't know how Notre Dame's going to approach that. And obviously the defense, you're just reacting to
Mhm.
um, whatever they're doing. I happen to think so. One of the things with Klein is that he does such a great job of, and it's like, from old Bill Snyder days too, of like being like, hey, we're going to go like 4-0 here. And just like, you got to get ready for this formation. And then the next play, it's just like, you know, it's like you're going 22, right?
Yeah.
2 tight ends and a fullback. And they do that kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know if that's the kind of thing, like maybe maybe they'll want to get the ball off quickly because they want to catch you by surprise in terms of your adjustments to that. Um, but I also think that like you're not I don't know how much the headset stuff of like communicating, how much like Al Golden's gonna have the influence on that, because one of the things that they talk about is they give the players have to have agency
Yeah.
to change and do whatever, because it can't be Golden who's just saying that all the time. They have to be able to check out of stuff on their own, and if they can't, they're just going to get caught in a play the next time. So,
Mhm.
and I think that's the kind of same thing with like Mike Elko too. It's like they're not going to be um, relying on that part of it. It's also not how they've coached for years and years. So it's like, in order to do that very specifically, and maybe Norvell was like, this is what they do for some NFL teams, but I haven't noticed that. I mean, when have you seen an NFL team that's going to be like consistently we're trying to snap the ball around 12
Yeah.
seconds? That's wild to me. That's like
Yeah.
stupid.
Definitely
That's
not
stupid
like
to me. Yeah.
definitely not with a quarterback you don't really or don't have a ton of
Yeah.
confidence in. Like maybe Mahomes, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe these guys who are just like the best of the best, not DJU. I mean, I think usually when teams are going like super fast, it's because they like the defense and they like the play that they're currently in. So it's very easy to just line up and be like, run it again. Like zone read, like when you have a zone read call on and you beat them and you like the defense that they're in, then you could just get in the headset and be like, run that again, try to pull it or something, right? Like you can always, because then you don't have to, the defense, you kind of have an idea what they're going to be in. You like the play. And so there's not a lot of moving parts there. Whereas like you're going fast and you're changed the play and the formation all over the place. Like you're just making your own players tired because they're running back and forth. Like it just like their diminishing returns on that are usually pretty high. So the times that I've seen teams running fast, like if I see a team going fast and I'm on defense, I'm thinking whatever they just ran, we're going to get that again, And so like look, when you're in like when you're in like a fire drill situation and everyone's kind of running around and it's in the game, there's the fog of war, right? Like that can be successful, but like generally speaking, you want to make sure you're in the thing that you want. Everyone's set, and you're kind of ready to go. Alakino wants to go off topic. Traore gets 2 sacks this week. Bet on it, so he's ready for some sacks on there. Doc Jack says, will KVA be as good as Manti or Jalen as a freshman?
Yes.
Jamie, Jamie is all in on the
Probably better.
KVA. Oh my
Better.
God, probably better.
I think he's better than them as a freshman. It's not to say that he'll have the exact same careers that they have, but like they didn't say this kind of stuff about those guys when they were starting.
Yeah,
Man, he like mentally he is way further along than those guys. He is. He just is.
better. That better. Jamie's marker is down on
Well,
that.
it's a little hard too because um I mean, go back to those guys as freshmen. They had nice flashes, which you kind of expect, but like even Manti being the starter, it was like, I mean, they kind of gave him the job because it was like Torian Smith was in front of him, and it wasn't.
Wasn't a
I
good
mean,
defense.
it wasn't a good defense, so it wasn't like he didn't really like have to beat out the guys that KVA would have to beat out,
Yeah.
And even with Jalen, and it's not to say he would have played and he would have probably over time had his role expand. But if Danny Spond is back and healthy the whole year, he's probably not starting at the beginning of the year. And there was definitely like he got elevated because of that, right? So let's just say KVA is starting by week 3. That is a different situation than those guys.
Yeah. Chief Brody asks, what are the chances they just show up sleepy and sluggish on defense? I believe they being Notre Dame, I'll assume.
No. Okay. Yeah.
Or is he, or are we assuming A&M? I guess let's look at it from both sides. If Notre Dame did that, I mean, you'd be talking about like it's non-zero, but that's never been the case for Notre Dame's defense. They're never not.
I would say zero chance for both those things that are going to happen. Sleepy and sluggish.
Okay, yeah. So he's referring specifically to Notre Dame.
Sleepy and sluggish. I don't know why anyone would think that they were going to be sleepy and sluggish in week 1 against the big opponent
with 100K in the stands.
People might, okay, so let me just preface this. There might be people who say, man, Notre Dame really came out sleepwalking because they have like a bad first drive. Like people would have said that about the Navy game last year.
I'm very glad you brought this up.
That wasn't them being sleepy or sluggish. It was they were running a bunch of stuff that they hadn't seen and they didn't know because it was like, holy crap, their like script was like all over the map. And
yeah,
that could easily happen with A&M in this game. Their opening script could be wild, and Notre Dame could be like, holy crap, we're kind of running around, checking into this, checking into that. And that's usually how the game goes. Even if you go back and watch the beginning of the Texas A&M and Georgia Tech game,
Florida State, Georgia
State, Georgia Tech game, the flow of the game after the first 2 drives by both teams was so different.
Yeah.
Was so different because it was they're scripting it, and it was very different because they had to adjust, and they're like, oh, we haven't seen this from them before. So it's not going to be, that's not what it's going to be. There is a chance that I think, A&M could have like a really great opening drive because of that and, catch Notre Dame into something. And I would say too, like, it could be something similar for A&M's defense on the first drive where they're like, they get caught and Notre Dame could come out and score a touchdown on the very first drive. Everyone could be like, oh, here we go. Like everyone's feeling great. It's like, it might not look like that the rest of the game. It just, it is. It's very much a cat and mouse game throughout.
We've referenced him before on this channel, Parker Fleming at Stats of War. He has this whole meme of, they show the American Psycho meme with Christian Bale. It's like, very nice. Now let's see the unscripted drives, right? Like offenses have been working on their script for 2 weeks, like they know what they're going to run. They're practicing it over and over
working
again.
on that for months for this first game.
Yes. But the team specifically has been practicing it. And so they know what they're doing. It's just like, FSU 2021, Notre Dame right down the field, right? Like it's just that's how these offensive coordinators work. So, like to me, an opening drive touchdown by Texas A&M, it's not cause for alarm. We don't need to be saying things like they weren't ready, they came out flat. It's just the nature of it, right? Like let the game play out. Like no one would say Georgia Tech's defense came out flat and wasn't ready after the totality of that game,
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Chief Brody, so he said, I saw them never get off the bus on both sides of the ball in the big house. I assume he's referring to 2019. Look, that's why I say, like, it's non-zero, right? Like, it's not impossible. It's just like you would never predict it. Like, what would they like? First of all, this isn't the first, like, this isn't in the middle of the season for one, right? Like, there's that piece of it. Like, look, that was cold. It was pouring rain. Like, it was a complete,
Horrible. I don't know
like,
if
that
you.
was a torrential. Like, if there is a monsoon during this game, then I would say the chances of it are higher.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen. Like, it just isn't. It's going to be warm. The crowd is going to be insane. If they come out scared and sluggish, it would just be completely unpredictable to the point of like there's no point in really even discussing it as a possibility because it just shouldn't happen, right? Like, it's what are the chances of someone getting hit by lightning? You know, like I don't know. Like, we don't talk about it, but like it's non-zero, right? So that's kind of what it is, right? Like, well, Greg's going to the beach. What are the chances he gets eaten by a shark? Like, I don't know. Like, they're not very good, so we probably just shouldn't really talk about it. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's so.
I just want to bring up two examples too of why, like, I mean, whatever. I'm not trying to get on Chief Brody for asking the question because whatever. I know so many people think of this kind of thing,
For sure.
right? So many people think of that.
What are the
And
chances Notre Dame lays an egg?
yeah.
You know,
And so I won because Sam K brought up, and this is because I was at that Michigan 2019 game. Notre Dame's defense did not come out sluggish. They got a 3-and-out on the very first drive, got their hand on a punt. Jonathan Jones made a mistake, tried to jump on the thing. You know, it's Peter, get away. Peter's what you yell when to say stay away from the punt. It's not somebody's name, just in case anybody's want to know what the heck's going on there. But stay with it. He didn't. And they got the ball back and got new life on the thing. And then it was like downhill from there. So, yeah, but you're saying they didn't come out like in a bad way. It was like they got that, and then all of a sudden that changed. It's just like those plays can like flip things in a game. And I'm just telling you in that game too, it was like the reason wasn't because they were it always goes back to the film, man. Go check out the film. They were running this counter. They had not run that counter all year. And they like Notre Dame was like Clark Lee, usually just fantastic adjustments. It was like they could not get that going. They could not get that fixed within the game. And they ran it on them the whole first half. And it was like between series, there was nothing that they could do to adjust to that. And they just destroyed him, just destroyed the defense on that whole first thing. Just I don't know how many yards they had on that counter in the first half, but it was a lot. It was a lot. That was most of the rushing yards in the game.
all the yards.
Yeah. And then another perfect example too. You would say, hey, 2020 against North Carolina, man, the defense really came out sluggish. I mean, you can ask those guys after the game. They didn't make big adjustments. It wasn't that they didn't whatever. They just didn't execute. Like everyone wasn't on their P's and Q's at the beginning of the game. Could you say that's sluggish? I mean, maybe you could say it, but could you say that when Tariq Bracy got cooked on the one post route that was clearly the defense being sluggish? It was like, I mean, he just got beat on a for 60-yard whatever it was, right? So I don't know. I do kind of think that like people don't take into account. It's like guys come into the game, they're ready to go. If anything, they might be too jacked up, and that might cause them to like kind of back to what we were saying about those linebackers earlier. They might be too jacked up, and that might cause them to make mistakes or whatever. And so you say, man, they came out sleepy. It's like, no, they just were like overthinking it or weren't thinking enough or just weren't processing it fast enough. And it's also another thing where everyone looks good in practice when it's like, hey, I can hear everybody and we're getting this and we're all on point. And then all of a sudden it's different when there's that many fans and things aren't going well, whatever. And it takes guys to kind of elevate them to get it out of it. And that's exactly why you should have like, Notre Dame could be having a terrible first drive on that first drive. And then all of a sudden Howard Cross could bust in the backfield and get like a tackle for loss, and it could flip that thing. And that's why you want those guys who can step up and kind of be examples. You don't have to yell at somebody on the sideline. You don't have to yell at your teammates. Go out there and make a play, then everyone else can follow.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe they should sleep more, right? Don't be too jacked up, right? Maybe one Red Bull and not 2 or 3, right? That's where it's at. So yeah, we'll monitor that stuff. We'll keep an eye on it. Most importantly, just stay level focused as fans, right? Like a bad start doesn't mean a bad overall performance. So we'll keep an eye on it. But that's where we're gonna end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going to go live. Me and Jamie are going to be back on Thursday. I'm thinking about adding a Friday show, Jamie. We'll monitor that. I want to do a little like happy hour, just everyone sitting around talking about sports, talking about college football. Big weekends coming up. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I've got something going on. We've got a regular guest that's come on Friday that can't do this Friday. So we're gonna get something going. So pay attention to this space. Watch this space. We got something coming out on Friday. But we'll be back on Thursday. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.